Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to be back with y'all this morning. Thank you all for the invitation to come back. It's always nice for you to want me to come back. We'll be talking about faith, and faith is one of those, call it a skill, certainly a blessing, certainly something that we're supposed to grow in. But like many other things, I'll just use weightlifting as an example. Went to Middleburg High School, played footballs on the weightlifting team. I wasn't particularly special in either of those. I did weightlifting so I didn't have to do something more unpleasant, but it required running. And we had to do something. But lifting weights is something that I learned that if you don't keep doing it, it's not that the muscle goes away, it just sort of relaxes, gets less strong. You still have the muscle there. It doesn't start breaking down unless you have some sort of disease. But if you don't continue to exercise those muscles, then you're not going to be as strong. I found this out several years after I graduated high school and then graduated college. I was in the basement of some of the teens in St. Louis, and they had just gotten into working out. And so they were down there and they were showing off how strong they were. And I'm looking, I'm like, man, I used to warm up with that much. Certainly I can do that much. So they challenged me, hey Andy, how much can you lift? Well, I don't know, I hadn't done it in a while, guys. So I get down there and I throw it up. I'm like, okay, it felt pretty good. So I started thinking, I wonder how much I can do still. Well, free weights are a little different than going and using the machine with the pulleys and this, that, and the other. You have to have a lot of core strength so you don't hurt yourself. Well, I get down there and I start pushing it up and, okay, well, let's put a little more on it. A little slower. And, all right, let's do one more. Well, as soon as I lifted it up, I knew I should have put it back. But I went down with it, and as I'm going up, I'm thinking, oh boy, this is bad news. And I paid for it dearly for several days, maybe even weeks later. Because I had not been exercising. I exercised, like I said, because it was something to do. I was on the weightlifting team because, well, I enjoyed playing football. But really, it would have been a whole lot easier to sit around after school. And I had not continued working out the way I had in high school. Faith is similar in that it's a depreciating skill. It's a depreciating talent. It's a depreciating Christian thing that we're supposed to have. And there's all kinds of faith. We're supposed to have faith that there is a God. And we're supposed to have faith in His Word. And we're supposed to be faithful to Him in service and in action. But if our faith isn't tested, if we don't exercise our faith, if we're not in the Word, faith comes by hearing and hearing by the Word of God. If our faith isn't tested in our Christian walk, then it is going to depreciate. It is going to be weakened. And it is quite possible that there's going to be something that comes along in our life that completely destroys our faith. And as I just mentioned, there's different kinds of faith. There's faith in God, that He exists, and faith in His Word, and being faithful to that Word and to God. Our faith can be destroyed in any number of those ways. Where we might not have our faith completely destroyed that there is a God, our faith could be destroyed in our actions, that we're no longer faithful to Him. I'm going to look at two examples this morning. Two men, and one of them is kind of weird, that we're going to look at as a faithful, righteous man. But the first one's Noah, back in Genesis. And the second one, like I said, is a little odd. We're going to look at Lot. Lot, that nephew, cousin, relative of Abraham that followed him from his father's land, followed him all the way to the promised land. Lot that his men argued with Abraham's men, and Abraham gave him the choice land. Lot that Abraham went in and rescued when he was captured. And Lot, who was rescued finally from those wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by those two angels before God destroyed it. We see in Hebrews, as we just read there earlier this morning, in that book of faith, that chapter of faith, I should say, Hebrews 11, where it talks about all kinds of faithful men and women of the Bible. Some of them aren't even named for their faithfulness, just sort of listed there in the last 10 or so verses very quickly as examples to us, as a great cloud of witness that we should look to as faithful men, faithful women of all the things that they underwent. We can think about Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham. We can think about the judges, Gideon, who grew in his faith, started out making excuses. Moses started out making excuses and later went on to lead Israel out of the promised land. Gideon leading 300 men against 150,000 strong, defeating them with God's strength. There are some great examples of faithful men and women in the Bible. Hebrews 11, verse 6 and 7, we read there, "But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him." Faith in God and faith that he is going to be faithful to reward. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, I would suggest that that thing not seen is a global flood. We could also maybe even say that it would be rain. We could look at several passages both in the Old Testament and this one right here that it had never rained like it rains outside right now. And sort of a mist was over the whole earth. And so it certainly is divinely warned that a global flood that is going to wipe out everything, wipe out everybody and everything, is coming. But also, if it starts raining and you've never seen rain, that's going to be pretty alarming. So Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, preparing an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Noah had and demonstrated the same kind of faith in God that we could see in Abraham. He was told something to do, and then he did it faithfully. He faithfully executed the will of God. Go and build this ark to certain dimensions, and then I want you to put all this stuff in it, and I'm going to close the one door, and I'm going to flood everything. And anything not inside that ark, when the door closes, is going to be completely wiped out. That's scary. That is terrifying to think about a global flood. Flooding up in the Missouri area, the Mississippi floodplain there, of where you can see these videos of sandbags where they're just trying to stave off the water. They've got water pumps going to pump the water out that's gotten in. Imagine that covering everything. And Noah, being the only guy that's told about this, is supposed to now go, according to 2 Peter chapter 2, to go and preach and tell people, as well as build this ark before this global flood that's going to kill everybody and everything comes. He had faith in all aspects of this passage. He was warned, and then he did. Genesis 6:22, after God tells him everything to do. That's Genesis 6:22. After God tells him all the things to do and all these specific dimensions of how to build this really big ship. Which, sidebar, those same dimensions are used for big freight ocean-going vessels today. The same kinds of dimensions where, well, I'm getting off topic here and I don't have time. But after he was told all this stuff to do, it says, thus Noah did according to all that God commanded him. And so he did. Noah was a faithful man. He was moved with godly fear. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 10 and 11. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body, according to what he has done, whether good or bad. Knowing, therefore, the terror of the Lord, we persuade men, but we are well known to God. And I also trust are well known in your conscience. Hebrews chapter 12, going hand in hand with that passage. Verse 28 and 29. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. For our God is a consuming fire. Noah heard what God told him, believed him, and moved with godly fear. How easy it is for us, and we consider the promises made to Christians and also the warnings against not obeying God in the New Testament. That God's coming back, and those who are not faithful, those who didn't obey, those who are not Christians, those who are not in the church, are going to spend an eternity in hell. It's real easy, though, to sort of put that on the back burner. To put that in the back of our mind and think, okay, yeah, that'll happen in a while. Noah is told there's a flood coming. I would imagine it would be more difficult for him to put that on the back burner. It was probably a little harder for Noah to think, yeah, okay, I'll get around to building the ark sometime. I don't know. It's possible, I suppose, that the full conversation that God had with Noah is not recorded for us, but Noah's not given any kind of timeline. Noah's not told, hey, next year at this time, you better get to work because the flood's coming, and if that ark's not done, down to the bottom. He's not told any kind of timeline. You got to work. We don't have any kind of timeline either. Noah moved with godly fear. Now, fear is a really good motivator. My kids do what I tell them to because, well, they fear me. Not in the same kind of fear that you go to watch a horror movie or fear that you set the alarm so bad guys don't break in, but a reverence, an awe, and also the rod of correction. They fear that as well. They don't want to be punished. Noah had that godly fear, not a fear that God is going to come down and smite him with pestilence and destroy him, but that was part of it. Noah had faith in God. He obeyed God because he knew God was going to do what he said he was going to do. And Noah didn't want to get caught up in the flood. Noah's acted out of faith with his will. He built the ark and preached. I mentioned a minute ago, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5. If you want to go ahead and turn over there, because we're going to be transitioning to Lot next, and we're going to look at 2 Peter there as well. But Noah, in verse 5 of 2 Peter chapter 2, it says, God did not spare the ancient world. Now, keep in mind, this is in 2 Peter in the context of the doom, of the destruction of false teachers. Those who teach what is the truth, but is not the truth. And he's using this as an example. This scene in Genesis chapter 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 of this destruction of the globe. He didn't spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. If Noah hadn't obeyed, if he had not had faith, he wouldn't have been on the ark. He would have never built the ark. But as a result of Noah's faith, and when you think about Noah's job, it wasn't just to build an ark for him and the animals. His job was, he was a preacher of righteousness. And just like Paul says to the Corinthians about the aroma of Christ, we are the aroma of Christ. To some, we are the aroma of life leading to life, and we are to others the aroma of death leading to death. To some people, we smell good. To those people who believe, to those people who want to know Christ and want to be faithful. But to those people who reject, we smell like death. Because that's what we're bringing. We're bringing the truth of God and His righteousness. And God's righteousness is also destruction for the wicked. Noah was only able to get his wife and his 3 sons and their wives on the ark. Of all the people in the world, he was only able to save those people. Let's look now at verses 7, 8, and 9 of 2 Peter chapter 2 as we consider Lot. Let's go back to we'll start in verse 6. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemning them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward would live ungodly. And delivered righteous Lot. Think about that passage. Think about what you know of Lot. Think about what the sermons you usually hear about somebody like Lot. In Bible class, I remember studying Lot when I was a kid and thinking that Lot was kind of an idiot. What's his deal? But Peter just described him through the Holy Spirit as righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptation and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment. If you go back to Genesis chapter 19, we see this scene play out where Lot is saved and his wife and his 2 daughters are saved. If you remember, Lot was given the choice land. And really, when you think about the choice, Lot, you want this land or that land? And Lot looks out and he sees the really nice land and he sees the really nasty land maybe. Well, which one of us is going to say, you know what? I think I'll take the really nasty dry land. I'm going to make my home over here. And Lot picks the best. Why not? He's given the choice. Abraham said, Lot, if you go here, I'll go there. If you want to go there, I'll go here. Okay, well, I'll come over here. Well, that was the valley near these cities. And Lot there pitches his tent, and his animals are grazing, and his family's enlarging, and he's getting rich. And then he's captured. And Abraham goes in and rescues him. But now in Genesis 19, we see Lot not camped outside the city. He's now taken up residence inside the city. That's a sermon for a different time. But Lot is there with his family, and now his family is becoming part of the culture. And I say that because he's got 2 daughters and their sons. His 2 daughters and their husbands, his son-in-laws. There we go. I'll get there. They've become part of the community. They're dwelling and participating, as it were. But Lot, it says, righteous Lot is one of the few that can save the city. Remember, Abraham is trying to talk God down, and really, God wasn't going to be talked down. God's not going to destroy the righteous with the wicked. But God knew. As he sent the 2 angels on away from Abraham, and Abraham sits there and he thinks he's negotiating with God. And they come into the city, these two angels. And it's nighttime. And Lot sees them and he greets them similar to the way Abraham greeted them earlier on the road when they showed up at Abraham's place. Why don't you come into my house and sleep here tonight? Oh, no, we're going to sleep in the town square. Wasn't a good idea then, and it's not a good idea now. I don't care what town you live in. And Lot says, no, guys, you don't understand. You don't want to sleep in the town square. Please come and stay with me. And he gets them in, and he's feeding them. And Genesis 19 tells us that the town surrounds his house on all four sides. And they are wanting these two individuals. And we've got a mixed audience this morning, so I'm not going to get into real specific details as to exactly what these people wanted with these two men, but they are beating the door. We know that you've got them in there. Open up. We want to know them. As in know them as the old King James know them. They didn't want to just introduce themselves and shake hands. Lot opens the door and he goes out and he says, please don't do this wickedness. And he identifies himself, brothers, please don't do this wickedness. No. You're not going to stand judge over us. You outsider, you foreigner. You're not going to be judge over us. We want them. And he offers up his two daughters. Take them instead. We're looking at commentaries when you read the New Testament about Lot. And you read what happened in the Old Testament about Lot. As I said, there's really not a whole lot of redeeming qualities that he has. He's not mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11 as being a man of faithfulness. But those two angels went into that city, and Lot, his wife, and his two daughters were the only ones they could find were righteous. Peter identifies him as a righteous man. The commentaries that I've read really don't paint Lot in a very pretty picture. I don't understand why he would offer up his two daughters to the crowd and spare the angels. I suspect that it may have been because he knew exactly who or what they were. And he was going to, in his own way, protect them. But they begin to beat the door down. And as you can see there in Genesis 19, the angels go out and strike them blind, and they escape. Lot goes in Genesis 19, in verse 14. After trying to save those angels, he went and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But his sons-in-law, he seemed to be joking. I don't know exactly why they would have thought that he was joking. I don't imagine that was something that he would have said as a joke before, and they thought that, well, this is just Lot trying to pull our leg again. It may have had something more to do with what Paul writes in Thessalonians, that God would send them strong delusions that they would believe the lie. Maybe it was that they were so wicked, that they were so corrupt, that they had been so calloused that it didn't matter how the truth was presented to them, that they weren't going to believe it anyway. But he tries to save the angels. He tries to save his sons-in-law. And in the end, he is snatched from the flames, as it were. Jude, verse 23, "But others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garments defiled by the flesh. Some versions will say snatched them from the flames. Pulling them, snatching. That's almost exactly what the angels did to Lot. Snatching him from the city. Because he's sitting there and he's dragging his feet. Maybe he was concerned about his earthly possessions. Maybe he just, wanted one last look at the family home. But destruction was coming, and those angels said, we got to go now. And they take him, they grab him, and they bring him from the city. We could say much more about Lot, both good and bad. But what we can see from these two individuals is that those who are faithful to God, those who continue to grow their faith, will be rewarded by God. Noah prospered. Noah and his family was saved because he was faithful to God. And when he got off the ark, he had the choice of everything. There wasn't anybody else to tell him that, no, that's my farm. You can't build your gazebo because that's my property. It was him and his family. That was it. The animals that were on the ark. That was the only people that were left. Lot, he maybe could have been rewarded much more. We don't know. It's possible that maybe if his servants and Abraham's servants could have gotten along better, maybe he would have been rewarded even much more. But his reward, we see him being saved from just being another casualty in the wicked city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Noah is blessed, Lot is spared. We can see some danger, though, in struggling with our faith, of trying to maintain a level of faith. As we mentioned this morning in Bible class, how the time when the church was being persecuted under the Emperor Nero, it flourished. But then when it became really easy for Christians, that's when people got kind of lazy and apostasy. Can we see that in our community? Can we see that in our country? How the persecution really is very minimal for Christianity. But when you look at other places in the world where Christians are being executed on video and then uploaded to the internet, Christianity becomes much more real, much more important. That destruction is imminent. Noah's destruction was imminent. Lot's destruction imminent. I'm going to be faithful to God now. But the danger is after you are successful in your faith and this struggle is to become complacent, to relax. The big game's over. The Super Bowl's won. All right, let's take the next 6 months off. Well, if you do that, you're not going to win next year. Abraham becomes a farmer, grows a vineyard. He gets drunk on wine, causing one of his sons to sin, being cursed. Lot, he escapes and he's scared to go to one of the other cities, which maybe that was good. Maybe Lot didn't need to be there. But as we can see at the end of chapter 19 concerning Lot, his family tree is not one to be proud of. As a result of his daughters able to getting him so drunk. This is there in chapter 19, verses 30 and following. His daughters were able to get him so drunk that he did not know what was going on to him. That is, very drunk. He didn't know when they came in and when they left. And they're up in the mountains, and they both end up with children. That's not a very good way to go. A man who was so righteous in this city full of wickedness, this man that not just lived a righteous life, but he confronted the wickedness. It wasn't just that he was faithful to God, that he was righteous, but then when those men came to be wicked, he confronted them and said, "Don't do this." He was the salt He was the one that was trying to stave off the infection in that city. He was unsuccessful. But then after this victory of faith, after he left, he allows himself to essentially lose his faith. We could see this same exercise in other aspects in the Old Testament. We could look at King David. We could look at Elijah. After his success on the mountain, confronting the wicked King Ahab and his wife and the priests of Baal. What a great scene. He's there and he's making fun of these false gods. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's gone on a long trip and he can't hear you. And they're sitting there parading around and he's just having a good laugh. And he says, God, send fire down. And boom. Not just the sacrifice, not just the wood, not just the rocks, but the water that they had drenched it all in was all gone. What a victory of faith in a place and a time where God's people were few and far between. Elijah, this great man of faith that is praised throughout the Bible. Later on, we see him depressed, losing his faith. That's the danger. Is that we could be on this mountaintop of faith and be successful through God's help in our faith in these trying times and then almost lose it. And it could be for any reason. I don't imagine in my personal life and working as a minister when someone would lose a family member, someone would lose someone that was not supposed to die at such an early age, and they would ask, why? Why did God let this happen? And I would think, that doesn't seem like the kind of struggle, the kind of thing that I'm going to have a problem with. I've known and loved and learned about God my whole life. I don't think there's something that somebody could tell me or something that could happen to make me believe that God is not there. But there is all kinds of ways that we can lose our faith, that we can struggle and maybe lose faith in God's people and turn our backs on His church. Maybe lose faith in God's ability to rescue us when we need it. 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk according to the flesh in the lust of uncleanliness and despise authority. They are presumptuous, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignitaries, whereas angels, who are greater in power and might, do not bring a reviling accusation against them before the Lord. I read that to say this. The Lord knows how to deliver. The Lord knows how to reward. Are we able to be faithful during those struggles? Noah, he didn't choose to live in a place and a time where it says that every thought and intent of man dwelt only of evil and inventing evil. He didn't choose that lifestyle. He was born into it, and it happened around him. Lot, he chose. He had the choice. He had the choice between living over here and over there, and he chose closer to Sodom and Gomorrah. Those places were known to be wicked places. And he chose to move his family from outside the city into the city. And he chose to bring his daughters up in that place, and they married men of that city. He chose that. And yet he was still able to be righteous. Are we able to be faithful both in the times when we're struggling because of external reasons. Not things that we've done, not situations that we've because of our own sin and foolishness, have found ourselves in. But are we also able to be faithful when we've messed up? When we've sinned? When we've moved our family into a place where it doesn't belong? Are we able to remain faithful to God all the time? Because God is always faithful. This morning, we haven't talked so much about how to become a Christian. But we've talked about what it is to be a Christian, to be faithful to God. And maybe you need the prayers of encouragement to be faithful. You need the encouragement and the prayers of the congregation here through a struggle of faith right now. Or maybe if you want to be a Christian and you can put on Christ in baptism, the invitation is always open. Won't you come as we stand and sing?